Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a pleasure to invite my panelists on the stage. They are the ones who will join us. Please come and join me. We have a session today which is really following on from what we did yesterday with Mr. Michel Servoz. We will be looking at the question of skills across borders. And what we are planning to look at in particular is at how do we work with the structures we have to bring in innovation. And also what we want to do is to look at the roles of different actors. So please join me on stage and take your seat. I will introduce you when you're here. We have here with us a panel that comprises different actors. And in particular, we have Osman Yildiz from Turkey, representing the Turkish trade unions. We have Rodion Kolishko, Deputy DG of the Confederation of Employers of the Ukraine. Luisa Coutinho, who's the Executive Director of the International Welding Federation. And we have Elnur Suleymanov, Head of Department of the Employment and Labor Policy in the country of Azerbaijan. So we have, please take your seat. We have here with us a panel which has voices from the employers, from government, from trade unions, and from international federations. Yesterday at the beginning, we heard the Youth Forum declaration starting telling us, think innovative. But to think innovative, we also have to think with the structures we have. And here we have a panel that represent different voices and different ways of approaching the question of how we innovate our vocational training systems. We have heard that there is no one size fits all. And here we have countries represented with very different experiences and at different stages in their thinking and implementation. And I think this is also a good way of bringing the experience down to the level of how do we tailor the policies to the needs of countries. We are at the European Training Foundation. We work as a European Union agency with about 29 countries in North Africa, Eastern Europe, and Central Asia. And we see the differences in stages of development, the different in stages of maturity of systems. But we see that the challenges that we face, as we heard yesterday, are very much similar. So I think I very much look forward to hearing the different perspectives and trying to bring a picture together of how we can move towards innovative thinking in the way in which we approach vocational education training in the future. We have agreed with the panelists that we will do 2 quick rounds of questions. The first one really looking at, from their perspective, what is their contribution to the current discussions in their own countries or internationally for the Welding Federation, to the definition of skills, the upgrading of skills, and seeing how these different actors can tell us something about how innovation can take place. We can start maybe with Osman from the Turkish trade unions.
Good morning to you. Good morning to all. First of all, I would like to thank for European Commission and European Training Foundation to inviting us to this important meeting here in Abu Dhabi. Indeed, we are here to confirm that the skills are changing. We are here to confirm that the VAT is important for the future of the world. So we know that the occupations are changing. There are a lot of reports saying that the things are changing with the involvement of technology in the process. So we are very sure that the things are changing, and concerning the changing of the occupations, the skills needed to be changed to accommodate these changes into the real life. In Turkey, we know about this, and we started a new process in Turkey. We have created Vocational Qualifications Authority with the contribution of the European Union Turkey is part of the EU process. Turkey is a candidate country to the European Union. So we enjoy very much the contributions of the European organizations there. So now we have created a National Qualifications Authority there. What we are doing in the National Qualifications Authority, we are describing occupational standards, we are describing qualifications, and we are doing, we are creating work test centers to give certificates to the people. So this is a new national system in Turkey. The basic good thing in this process is that this authority is not defining or doing all these things. What we are doing in Turkey, we are accrediting the stakeholders to define occupational standards, to define qualifications, and to be accredited for work test centers. Even my confederation, this is a trade union confederation, we have a work test centers accredited from these organizations. So these organizations is monitoring, guiding, and giving license to all these processes. In all the structure of these organizations, stakeholders are the part and parcels of the process. There are sectoral committees which define, there are 26 sectoral committees which they define the qualifications, skills in the sectors there. The board is made up of the stakeholders, and I am representing there the workers, and I am elected persons representing workers in the organization there. So it is a body, a tripartite body, which is unique even in Turkish case. From bottom to up, all stakeholders are involved in the process, defining the skills, qualifications, even they make the exams to give the certificate.
Thank you very much. I think having listened to a voice from the trade unions, we maybe can move to a voice from the employers' organization, and in another country which is undergoing a process of reform of their education system with our new education law, Rodion.
Thank you. Thank you, Cesare. Good morning, everyone. I also would like to thank European Commission and European Training Foundation for this invitation, and special thanks to organizers for this magnificent event. Yes, you are absolutely right that Ukraine is now facing the necessity of deep reform of educational system, and there are some challenges which provoked this reform. I would mention some of them just to brought everybody to the context. Well, Ukraine is, as many other nations, is an aging country. Unfortunately, by the year 2030, we will have the correlation between the employed people and retired people somewhere up to 1 to 1.67. So it's not very good from our point of view. Then Ukraine is now very suffer from the external migration. According to different calculations, there are up to 7 million of Ukrainian citizens who work abroad. And unfortunately, they are not going to come back. And another threat which we see, this is the loss of young people who would like to learn abroad. Now we have up to 60,000 students who who study abroad Ukraine, and unfortunately, 8 from 10 questioned graduates of secondary schools would like to go abroad and continue education there. So, from our point of view as employers' organization, this is the quite understandable threats to the labor potential development, and one of the means to things to do something better. This is the better governing of qualifications. So the borderline for this was in 2012 from our point of view, where two main changes in the legislation system occurred. One was the adoption of the law of Ukraine on employers' organizations, when employers' organizations gained the rights to design qualifications and to make a contribution to the educational system developments. And second was the law on the so-called state order for training of qualified people, when also employers got the right to be a part of stakeholders who formulate this order from the point of state. What happened next? Since that time, basically employers' organizations reviewed more than 450 qualification documents, which lays as a basic for the educational standards. We produced 75 occupational standards only by business, not without any governmental support. And we produced more than 50 educational standards based on these occupational standards. We introduced the system of validation of prior learning in Ukraine and established a special NGO, which is called Institute of Professional Qualifications, which is specifically established for the issues of coordination of different stakeholders in the sphere of designing qualifications. So this is, and the last change we have this year, in September, we adopted a new law on education, which combines two spheres, the spheres of education and the sphere of qualifications in one legislative act.
Thank you very much. I think we have another very relevant example, and we hear the contribution that also employers can give to the reform process in countries. We now go to a voice from government, from a Ministry of Labor, and we ask Elnur from Azerbaijan to give us his views.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Cesare. I also would like to thank the European Commission and ETF for the invitation and having me here. So Azerbaijan is not such a big country, so just to understand the context, I will just give a small information about my country, which is situated on the coast of the Caspian Sea, surrounded with Russia on the north, with Iran on the south, and then on the west side we have Georgia, Armenia, Turkey, and so that's the situation. And how do we contribute as a government? We have established last year the Tripartite Commission, where government, trade unions, and the employers' confederation is represented. Then we have established the Commission on the Education and Employment, where we also discuss these issues. Of course, occupational standards, which is the general trend, and we are also developing them based on the international standards. And also we have a quota commission on working migrants, where also this topic is very important. Demographically, Azerbaijan is different, slightly different from the situation from the Ukraine. We have very young generation, young population in Azerbaijan, and the population is growing around 1.1% on annual basis. And we have around 110,000 youngsters entering to the labor market every year. For the country with the population of 10 million people, it is quite essential amount of the people. And we have to be prepared to accept these people. But we have to confess that with all the efforts of the government, our economy is not able to absorb all these people at the same time, and we are now thinking about the export of the labor resources to abroad. And to export the labor resources abroad, of course, this is also a kind of product. You have to prepare it properly, and the skills which they are having, which is the major factor. So then the question was which skills we have to develop. Of course, we are looking to the general trends, the digitalization and other things, but our government also confirmed very recently roadmaps for the major economical directions which have to be developed. These are IT industry, tourism, logistic and transportation, and the agriculture. So we are trying to put more efforts and more attention to these directions when we are developing the skills. But for me, the major question is not which skills has to be developed. This will come with the time. The major question is how the educational system is operating. Is it the traditional style, or is it digitalized? Is it modern? And before, in the past times, everyone was going to the WED system or to the university, getting skills, knowledge, competences, and was using it during his whole life. But nowadays, the skills are getting older very soon, very quickly. So you have to keep yourself updated. And you cannot send people for the long life learning every single year or every 2 years to vet school. So then you have to get these skills in other ways. For example, in Azerbaijan, only 32% of our labor force has a formal qualification, but 68%, of course they have skills, but they gain them in informal or non-formal conditions. And it means that you have to deal somehow with this. So you have to understand how to recognize these skills and this knowledge. And I would like to just close this part of my speech with the example from my family, with my son. I have my older son, he is 10 years old, and his beloved game is the Minecraft. I'm sure most of you know this game. So 1 year before, he told me that I have to additionally redevelop this game and to adjust it for myself. So we ordered a couple of books for him, and now he is redeveloping this game. So then this is about skills. Does he have skills? Of course he has skills, and he is already software programmer, let's say, in a simple way. So, and when he will be grown up, I don't know if he will be software programmer or not, but definitely he has skills, and these skills has to be recognized.
Thanks, Elnur. I think I should put my 10-year-old in touch with yours. Maybe they have a future as joint programmers. Now we go to a different view, complementing what we have heard so far. Luisa is from Portugal, but she's giving us the view from an international federation, one of the big ones, International Welding Federation. Please.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you first for the invitation to be here, and to thank you for your question. I have to apologize because I have a bad cold, so I'm not sure if I'm not going to have a coughing attack. So first probably I should start by telling you what the European Welding Federation is, or what welding is. In fact, welding and joining technologies are technologies that are used in everything around us. I see many of you looking at your iPhones and iPads and computers. All that has thousands of welds. And of course, the cars you drive every morning, they have a lot of welding as well. Also in here, I have taken a quick look at the WorldSkills competition, and well, there is a welding competition there, of course. And if you walk around all of these booths for the different professions, you see quite a lot of welding equipments, and not only welding equipments, but also adhesive bonding, mechanical bonding. So all of the joining technologies are there, and are used in many of the professions that, in the area of manufacturing and engineering, in particular in that area. So welding is actually important. The reason why the European Welding Federation was established back in 1992 was the fact that the welding institutes and associations of the European countries that were then members of what was called then the European Economic Community and later became the European Union, had this idea that once Europe would be together, there was a point to harmonize the qualifications for welding professions, and that is not. We link a lot welding to the welders, but welding and joining also has professions that come from the welders, which is the operators on the shop floor, to the welding coordinators at the top level, so engineers who coordinate the big welding projects and the constructions in big metallic constructions. So that's how we thought it was important to make sure that everybody would have similar qualifications, would be able to acquire the same skills and perform in the same way in any company, because mobility was something that was going to come. So we developed a system that has two main backbones. One is the training guidelines, so where the way the courses should be, the topics that the courses should cover are defined. And then another one, of course, is a quality assurance system, which is a very comprehensive quality assurance system. So this system is now used in 46 countries in the world, so not only Europe, but many countries outside Europe through an agreement with the International Institute of Welding, and is open to everybody. From Turkey, it's the Getting Holding, for instance, who is our member. From Ukraine, it's the Pattern Institute, so well-known organizations. Azerbaijan is not our member yet, but you are becoming our member, isn't it? Yeah.
Promise.
Okay, so our members are actually the welding institutes and the welding associations. And the group of the 46 representatives of our members meet twice a year. And meet twice a year with the aim of analyzing, it's twofold actually. One aspect is to analyze the needs of updating of the training guidelines, so the technical content of our guidelines. So our members work in close cooperation with the industry. So they know the difficulties the industry face, and they bring those problems to us, to the whole of the members, the general assemblies, and we discuss what is important to embed in our system. Similarly, the same is done for the quality assurance, so we have, authorizations. In each country, the member selects an organization to be the authorized national body, so the body that runs our system in that country. This body it's audited and then has an authorization for 5 years, and it's audited regularly. So that is, the quality assurance also needs to be updated and adjusted to, to involve all of the countries in the world. So it's one of the sources of information for adapting the content of our guidelines, and thus the skills. It's actually coming directly from the industry, the employers. There is another important source of information that actually comes from the 650 training centers we have all around the world. So they're called, in our system, authorized training bodies, and they are authorized by the authorized national bodies. So these training centers are vet schools, many times vet schools that are in the national system for training, for vocational training, and the students and the teachers from these schools also give us feedback about the result of the difficulties in doing the training and so on. So these are the main two sources that we use to update our system and to maintain a 25-year-old system, always updated and fulfilling the needs of our stakeholder, of our industry, of the employers.
Well, thank you very much. I think we have learned at least two things. One is that when an expert looks at the world, she sees something else. We look at the phones and we see Facebook. She looks at the phone and she's welding. And secondly, we have learned that there is not just the traditional actors that we see represented here, but also a lot of different type of networks. And this is a great example. Coming onto the question of standards and certification, cooperation then with the real bodies, and quality assurance. I think that's a great example. Elnur wanted to give a quick reply.
Yes, thank you very much, Cesar. I have one short reflection on this, about the example of Azerbaijan, about the deficit of the skills in the welding especially. You probably know that Azerbaijan is famous with the production of the oil. And many years back, 25 years back, Azerbaijan has signed a big contract. We call it the contract of the century. And we started preparation works. And 3 years back, we faced a big problem when we understood that country needs hundreds of the welders who are able to weld under the sea, offshore. So it was a big surprise for us, and it was a big lesson learned. So my message to all countries, all governments, whenever you prepare any program, project, whatever development roadmap, think beforehand what kind of skills you will need. So then we faced this problem, this big deficit, and we started inviting welders all over the world for fantastic salaries. And now we started preparing our own welders, and we agreed with my colleague that we will get the support on this issue.
Great, we have a deal on stage already. The second question I want to ask, which I think goes to the nub of what we were discussing yesterday, is we have heard that skills are changing very fast. And we have heard from your examples that either tripartite or councils or the new law being implemented, the process is quite slow in reality. So from your point of view, how can we find ways in which we can keep up with the speed of change? We have different challenges, but the speed of change, I think, is something we all agreed yesterday is common to all of us. So what do you think, from your point of view, needs to be done or can be done in order to ensure that we keep up with the speed of change? Do we need some reflections on global vet? Do we need some reflections on using maybe social media, communities of practice? What kind of ideas should we put on the table to ensure that the pace of change does not leave us behind? Maybe we can take the same round, starting with you.
Concerning this change, I would like to refer to statistics released by the report of World Economic Forum. It says that it estimates that 65% of the children entering primary school today will ultimately end up working in completely new job types that do not exist yet. And the second is about Turkey, saying that 41% of the qualifications of Turkish workforce in 2015 will change by 2020. It means that it is a very ambitious situation that in 5 years, almost half of the qualifications are changing there. What we are doing, we are benefiting, as I said, we are benefiting, cooperating with European organizations mainly. We work closely with the ETF to follow the changes there. And in Turkey, every stakeholder is developing their own standards, because what we are accrediting the organizations which are qualified, coming from the sectors there. We know that there are huge changes coming ahead of us. That's why, as a trade unionist, I say that this is a process of negotiation. We should negotiate the process. We are doing it to some extent, but we should do it more in the future there. Otherwise, there could be some problems. As a trade unionist, I should raise some concerns, because there is one dimension of the jobs that we should ensure that people should keep up jobs or to maintain jobs, or at least there should be a transition to new jobs there if they face problems there. We should also consider the women. The women shouldn't be eliminated in this process, because there are many references to saying that the women can face problems there. We should negotiate about the patterns of change. So the adaptations to the changes there, changes in the production, changes in the consumption, changes in the employment. So as a trade unions, as a social partner, we should be involving more to make these changes smoothly there, not to create problems in the society. Why should I also add the OHS dimension to the changes? Whatever we do, there should be a OHS dimension. The technology is not free from the OHS problems there. So we should also invest, and we should also discuss and negotiate about the safety at work. So I would like to mention about 5 words. Decent job, which is an important concept borrowed from the ILO. We support this word very much, and VAT is one of the pillars to support these decent jobs for all. Indulgence, which is very important, through the good education in VAT and the skills, that we should support indulgence of the people there. Impeccable, so it's very important to provide this. Agility is also important, but more than this, safety at work. So we should also provide safety at work. Yesterday, I visited the area behind, the people are working there, so I have seen that the safety is important because they do very important jobs, they do very innovative things, but they all are busy with the new machines, new equipment, a lot of things there. So the safety, whatever we do, safety is important for us. So that's why we should also work with international organizations, we should work with us, we should exchange our experiences to face the coming years.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Rodion for a view from the employer side.
Thank you, Cesare, for the question, and it's really very difficult to add something to very broad issues which our colleague mentioned, but I will try. From my point of view, the possible solution could be quite simply formulated, but difficult to realize. So to formulate it quite easy, from our point of view, is that the following new technologies, following new skills and competences should be definitely driven by business. So because the business is the main motivator, as we heard at the previous panel, of the most changes in the society. Another case is the readiness of the educational system to these changes and to these new incentives. And as many of the speakers at this conference said, and we saw it on the movie, that it's very difficult to predict which skills and competences would be needed for our children in the nearest future. And if we can't predict it, we can't teach them. So we have to invent, we have to maintain the basic skills and adaptivity and readiness to learn. Lifelong learning, from our point of view, is one of the main grounds for success in further cooperation of business, new innovations, new technologies, and education system. Because the education system is a priori a bit conservative. It should be conservative. But at the same time, it should give the opportunities to learn and to learn constantly through life.
Thank you so much. So emphasis on a business-driven focus, which complements what we heard from Osman before on focusing on the decent work dimension and workers. So how does the government come to a synthesis of these views?
My message would be that the global wage system has to change. And the most important trends are the following, that speed of the life is changing. So the speed of the life is very high. People are not ready to spend a couple of years for getting skills. So that's why the message would be that there is a big demand, and it will be even more in the future, for the short-term modular programs with using digitalized systems, so that people can do it simultaneously with some other activities as well. I respect a lot this approach of the decent job, decent work, but I think the trend is here also changing from the decent work to the decent life. So people would like to spend more time for their families, for their private life, for their fitness, for their fun, and trying to get these new knowledges simultaneously by doing something. And then, so that's why I think the wage should change. Then other trends which has to be taken into account, of course, the urbanization process. This trend is going all over the world, and people are going out from the villages, not because it is a bad job, because the productivity in the cities are higher. It means that more income, and more works in the urban area are decent, really decent. Then another thing which we have to take into account, that ability to learn something quickly, yeah, by using this source of technology. And the message to the wet system, my former boss was keeping saying to me that, Elnur, if the process is running and you cannot interfere this process, then you have to lead it. So I would ask the global wet system to lead this situation. The situation is changing, this new technology and everything. Then mobility of the people is increasing. We know that millions of the people, working migrants, are running all over the world. And the borders of the countries, they exist on the political map, but not on the labor market. So that's why, and our previous colleagues on the previous panels was mentioning this, the communication skills, the cross-culture understanding, also very important, and this should be also taken into account. The last thing, but not least from me, countries and systems should not try to invent bicycle at all. So the curriculums, the occupational standards, they have to be really international and very similar to each other. So welder in Azerbaijan doesn't differ from the welder in Ukraine. Maybe it has some features, for example, to make a welding offshore or something like this, but it cannot be different. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we heard views from trade unions, employers, and government. Luisa, from your vantage point of an international network, do you think they're doing enough?
I think I think we are aware. I don't know if it's enough, but at least we are doing what we can to tackle the future needs for the schools. But one possibility, actually, and I had to sell a bit what we do, is that it would, by contacting and collaborating with technical organizations in your countries or with associations like ours, there we can collaborate and help innovating in these models that are needed to be innovative, and then those models will be the little puzzle pieces will be changed very quickly, while the bulk is going to be maintained for much longer. So a bit like a legal construction, that's how we might be able to fulfill the gap in a bit of a quicker way.
Thank you very much. I think that's a great example. I mean, ultimately, whether our planes are welded manually or they are 3D printed, we want them to fly and be safe. But the skills that you need have to build on the knowledge and the know-how that we have. I think this round has showed us that innovation will not come out of the sky, but we need to build it with the structures we have, with the social partners, with the knowledge that we have in the present, and that we really need to focus, therefore, on how we transform this knowledge into processes that help us anticipate and do all the wonderful things with the pace of change. The panel has been incredibly disciplined, so we do have a few minutes for questions. I know you want your coffee, but I'll be very happy to take one or two questions if there is somebody who wants to make a comment, share an experience, or maybe ask our colleagues here. I see a question right there.
Hi, thank you to all the panelists. I'm in charge of industrial relations in Enel, so I completely agree that social partners can have, and they have, an important role in facing challenges and skills changing. And in the next years, this would be at the international, European, and national level the most important issues to discuss, because there is really a common interest in saving and maintaining jobs and qualifications. So this just to appreciate the trade unions and employers' affirmation. But my question is about the national qualification system, because from the Turkish trade union leader and from Ukrainian colleagues of employers. You have spoken and explained about your national experience about qualification system, but how to face, in your opinion, the international recognition of the qualification? I mean, when you have a Turkish or Ukrainian young technician with the national qualification, how is the best way for the young people and technicians to be recognized abroad? I mean, in Europe or United States, in your opinion?
Thank you very much. Do we have any other comment or question? I see one there. Mic is coming. Great.
Thanks. My name is Frans Baleni from South Africa. A question from the Turkish trade union. Is there a tension in terms of getting skills outside the borders of the country and not focusing on the citizens of a country? Because we've experienced those tensions in some instances. Secondly, do you acknowledge or embrace recognition of prior learning? Thank you.
Thank you very much. One last, or we go back to the panel? Okay, I see you want your coffee, so we go back to the panel, and maybe we start with Osman, given there was a question asked to you.
Thank you for these questions. The first question, concerning the first questions, yes, there is international recognitions, especially with the European recognition, because the system is created by the contributions and support of the European institutions, and the system is created at the end, and so it is compatible with the European system there, so it is recognized very well. And very recently, Turkish referencing achieved with the European Union, so this is fully recognized by the European Union. So this is the book. 3 months ago, Turkish referencing of the qualifications with the European Union is achieved there. So it is a report here there. So also we are taking into account all the international standards there. The stakeholders are taking them into account. So we have enough knowledge and know-how to develop them. So it is the aim is to make it to be recognized with all international organizations. The second question is about the tension, if I understood correctly. So I don't think there is such a problem there, because Turkey is also a globalized economic player there. So the Turkish companies are doing well at international level. So they are all taking into account the developments, national and international. So these are we have an important international dimension to our work there. So I don't think there is such a problem there. So everything is accommodated into the system there. Even now what we are doing, every 5 years we are updating the qualifications and the standards in Turkey. So it means that even the certificates, after 5 years, you need to renew them. So we are created a system of reproductive system. So it is a system renewing itself there. So concerning prior learning, so yes, the work test system in Turkey is taking into account lifelong learning. So it is a separate system from the education. Education is there, and the testing is something else. So this is the basic feature of the system in Turkey, which is taking into account all learnings, whether prior learning or other learnings, based on lifelong learnings there. So it is a system which is a comprehensive system, taking everybody into the system.
Thank you very much. Would you also have a comment?
Thank you. Well, I would like to contribute to the first question. Basically, to add, which Osman said, I would like to say that the systems of well, if we create a system and another country creates a system, so the system could connect. So the question is really in the referencing mechanisms. And if the qualification is built according to the rules, preferably which are recognized in other countries or internationally, it would be very simple to compare the qualifications and competences. If I'm not mistaken, the qualification system was designed initially for this purpose, to compare the qualifications of different people from different contexts. So basically, the main issue is to really establish a good qualification system inside the country and produce good qualifications which could be compared internationally.
Thank you. That's great advice.
I can add that in Azerbaijan we keep this process very simple. We are in the process of adopting new national qualification framework. Most probably it will be one-to-one with the European qualification framework, like Radion mentioned. The major reason that it should be recognized everywhere, and we are in the process of the preparation of the certification process. It will be examines with the involvement of all the associations, social partners to the evaluation process.
Thank you. Do you have a last word?
Yeah, I can actually comment a bit. So as I said, as an international federation that develops qualifications that are needed in the market, we come from a slightly different angle. But in all of the countries where we are, at least in Europe, our members are working with the national qualification authorities to try to align the qualifications that we do at international level in their national qualification systems. It's quite difficult. It's not easy. It's not an easy process because the way the qualifications are held can be slightly different in the different countries, but it's something that we are doing so to assure harmonization.
Well, thank you very much. I think we started the panel with Luisa reminding us how easy it is to catch a cold. I think what we want to have here is to find a system to catch good ideas and all go home with these ideas and try to see what we can do with them in our own jobs, in our own systems. And I think this panel has been very helpful in providing us real examples, different voices, but converging on the need to work together, focus on what you can do to grow your qualification systems, your systems within the country, and learn internationally through comparability, mobility, and through international cooperation. So join me in giving a big round of applause to our panel. Thank you very much.